Samson and Kayla confront Ramsey, and that is cross-cut with the police officer. They've got him pulled up to testify. The cross-cutting between those two scenes, that was not scripted. On paper, it seemed great, but then once I started putting it together, you realize there's a tension going on that you lose if you play both of those scenes as long, extended scenes. Once I get something in my head, I feel like it's got to be like this. I presented it with, I'm going to try something. The footage is in front of you, and you're just like, oh, it needs something else. I think I just did something that nobody was kind of thinking that worked in a way that really kind of elevated all of it.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hitchings of Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more on filmmakeru.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube channel. Every week, we interview a film professional, and this week we are delighted to be joined by Stephen Lang, whose work includes Superstore, The Equalizer, and Cross. And today we're going to be talking about Cross. The series follows Alex Cross, a brilliant forensic psychologist and DC Metro homicide detective. Cross is deeply committed to solving complex criminal cases while grappling with personal tragedies. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it, Stephen. Can you walk us through a typical workflow on an episode? Because you edited 3 episodes on this first season, correct?
Yeah, so I edited episodes 5 and 6, which was a block. So those were basically shot at the same time, edited at the same time. And then I also did the finale, and then I did a pass on all the episodes just to sort of get a general cohesive to it all and a visual look and just for pacing and pacing purposes.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
So how did the workflow go on that double episode? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so obviously they do a block thing to it's for cost savings, which means if they're going to a location, if the location is in more than one episode, then they'll shoot the scene that's for episode 5, and they'll also shoot the scene that's for episode 6, and that sort of takes time off of the usual sort of shooting schedule. So what will happen is, they shoot, the dailies get transferred. My assistant, who really kind of steps in and does all the organizing, gets everything kind of ready for me, organizes bins, script sync. Script sync is the process that I like to use when looking through all the footage. It's actually something I learned when I worked on the half-hour shows. It seems to be something that's more in the half-hour world, but I found in the drama world it actually makes my life a lot easier too. Just lets me go through performances a lot quicker, than trying to go through each of the takes and find particular moments. If you're, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but if you're familiar with some of the technical aspects of it, you'll understand that. Once my assistant kind of gets the bin, script syncs and has everything ready for me, I just jump in. I mean, the way I sort of approach, obviously I'll look at the script supervisor's notes, and I'll look at what the director, what he sort of, or what he or she is liking or not liking in terms of some performance stuff. But circle takes at the end of the day mean nothing. Like, I'm gonna watch everything, I'm gonna look at everything, and I'm gonna find pieces from things, even though it might not be circled. It's like, oh, I like this look, I like this moment. I need to figure out a way to kind of get this moment in. So, I can go through a scene pretty quickly and just get like a what I call like a rough sketch of the basics of what I want to do. It's looking from my point of view, looking for, who's the scene about, all the sort of basic stuff that that you normally would do when it comes to sort of building a scene. And so I'll kind of get through that first cut as sort of quickly as possible. And then I just start digging in and just looking at each individual moment and looking at each individual take and going, okay, I like this performance better here. I like this. I need a cutaway, to sort of sell this moment, and then once I've got the scene done, I usually wait until I got a bunch of scenes sort of ready to go, and I'll pass it on to my assistant who will do sound work on it, and then I'll usually take it back to finish in terms of doing the music. So I love to cut. I love to do music. When it comes to the sound stuff, I I definitely let my assistant take care of all that type of stuff.
There is without giving too much away, in episode, geez, I forgot if it's 5 or 6. I think it's episode 6. In episode 6, s- Alex and his son go on a road trip.
Yes.
And Alex is trying to repair this relationship, kind of this fractured relationship he had with his son. And what I noticed about that is I noticed that you really used a lot of the son's reaction shots. Can you talk about approaching kind of Alex and his son's relationship and how it was
Yeah, so that was obviously interesting scene dealing with some of the outside elements. If I remember correctly, that was that an outside scene when they're having conversation while they're eating burgers, or was that?
yeah, they're at like a little burger joint, and then eventually they end up in a hotel room because they're in Philly for the night.
That's right, that's right. And he's playing, I believe, the piano, right? I believe that was one of our sexy scenes too. Alex comes out of the
Oh, he comes out of the, yep, he comes out in a towel. Yes.
whenever you get a shirtless Aldous, we're always in good company. That's always going to elevate the scene even more.
Now, why I
Um,
asked you about it, I promise.
the young actor who played the son uh, was a really good listener. You know what I mean? Like ultimately, that's I mean, anytime you got Aldous on the scene, he's going to be driving it, right? But and we're comfortable uh, in terms of being with Alex, but we don't necessarily always get the point of views of the children per se. So it was one of those where I've just noticed he's a really good listener, and it's like, wouldn't it be more interesting to just kind of be able to play the scene and moments on him instead of letting it just be there's times where you could, you're just sort of servicing the story. And, to me, it's always a lot more interesting when you can just sort of get into the characters. So that was pretty much the idea in terms of being able to just kind of sit with him. I mean, the talking about that scene now, the one that really sort of gets me that I really just kind of loved was the one in the house later after the apology, and he asks about the mom. Emotionally, that's the one where it's like, oh wow, I mean, between like the two of them being able to kind of sit in the single shot with them as they're sort of reminiscing, and then just being in sort of Alex's world. Those are one of those scenes where you put it together, you get a little bit emotional, and then when you watch it like the 50th time, you're still kind of getting emotional, and you realize, okay, this is gonna this is gonna stay a powerful scene.
That was a really powerful scene when they were talking about the memories of the mom. It definitely tugged at my heartstrings a lot. But that young man, that young actor, he can really hold his own, and I
Yeah,
was quite impressed with him.
and that's the thing with kid actors. Sometimes it's what I mean. You never know what you're gonna get. So I thought in particular both of the actors were really strong, and I felt like we could utilize them as compared to just use them to get information across. The fun fact in that scene too, the actual um, uh, the voicemail. How remember he plays the voicemails for the kid. That's actually a true story from Ben Watkins, the creator. He actually did that in real life. So
That was so
It's
sweet.
I know to hear that that was actually a real thing. It was a really nice moment.
So, can you tell me how closely you collaborated with the director or showrunner, especially kind of episodes 5 and 6? I really feel are almost kind of a turning point for Cross. Did you collaborate with the director or showrunner quite a bit on kind of the emotional impact of these episodes?
So yeah, so obviously, so five, right? If you think about it, five is the culmination because he's hunting. He's onto something. We finally figure out who the killer is, and this is our confrontation episode. What's great about the episode, I think, was nervous about the episode, but also great is it's somewhat of a bottle episode in terms of just the party sequence. Now, we do have obviously everything that's going on underneath, meaning we've got the basement with him, Ramsey keeping the woman captured, and then we do have a little bit of a sub story with Samson, going to Indiana to find Ramsey's mom. But in a lot of ways, it's one of those what we call like a bottle episode, where you're just in this one location, and I mean, we knew it would be good because to get Eldis and I'm not remembering the actor's name, but the guy who played Ramsey, to get the two of them in a scene together, you knew like, oh, okay, this is going to be a lot of fun for the audience. I believe Stacey Muhammad, she directed both episodes 5 and 6. So we didn't talk too much during the process, but we did. Obviously, once I presented the cut to her, and then she got involved, there was definitely a lot of back and forth, just in terms of refinement, kind of just taking time out and really just kind of getting into performance and stuff. Um, my relationship ultimately, I have a long-term relationship with Ben Watkins, who is the creator of the show. I first worked with him on a show called Burn Notice many years ago, and have continued to work with him since. So there's definitely a shorthand knowledge in terms of what I know Ben likes and doesn't like. So it can make the process a little bit more easier especially when dealing with the directors, because obviously, at the end of the day, the television is more of a writer-producer medium, and Ben's going to kind of come in after. So it would be easier to sort of steer the director in a direction, just to say, you know, my feeling is Ben, is probably looking for something more like this. And then it's just a lot of the generals, like, oh, is he okay if we cut lines? And it's like, yeah, Ben's one of those guys that just, he loves a point of view. You know what I mean? He loves that we go in there and we present what we think is the best possible, version of the episode. He might miss a line, and he might say, hey, why did you cut this? Or can I see this? And he might say, hey, you know what? I like that. Let's put that back in. But he's never going to get upset for you to take a chance and just say, we did this, for a certain reason, or we just felt like we didn't need the line. Like, this look here feels so much more interesting, and than necessarily, a line of dialogue. So that's pretty much the process I go with him. And that's kind of what I encourage with the other editors, because obviously I came into the season later. I had a commitment on another show. So by the time I showed up, it was already off and running. So when I came in, it was trying to just encourage the other editors in terms of, I know the way Ben likes, and being able to just say, hey, you have a really long episode right now. It's a great episode, but you know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid to start, tightening things up and line cutting. You've got your editor's cut, once you start working with your director and you kind of go through with him, potentially start looking at these areas and see what can be done. So that's pretty much like the process with them.
That's great to have that type of working relationship. And you said you've worked with him for a long time, yes?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Burnos was the first thing we worked on together. He then did a series for Amazon called Hand of God for 2 seasons, and I worked on that with him, and now Cross, and then we've got this new thing, the Muhammad Ali series that just started shooting last week. So
Oh, yeah, I noticed your IMDb. You edited 7 or 9 episodes of Hand of God. I saw that on the.
yes, I tend to, like I said, see, he can trust and rely on me sometimes in a way that's like, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on that one for sure.
So can you talk a little bit about if there are any scenes that you were working on that evolved? You talked about kind of that you have the confidence and the ability to cut lines and maybe rearrange the script a little bit. Is there a scene that particularly sticks out that wasn't shot or written or shot like we the viewers saw it, that you had some hand in?
Yeah, so uh, the perfect one to discuss is the end of episode 6, when they Samson and Kayla confront Ramsey, right? And that is cross-cut with the chief, not the chief, the police officer who has got uh, the who's the guy that was
The
I'm
guy in the
forgetting
band, the guy in the band. I can't remember
the
his.
guy in the bed.
Yeah, and he
Right.
put
So
him
they've got him pulled up, right, to testify because they think they've nailed Ramsey. So the cross-cutting between those 2 scenes, that was not scripted. So those were 2 separate scenes, right? They had the scene with Ramsey, and then we had this long scene. But it was one of those, like on paper, it seemed great, but then once I started putting it together, you realize there's a tension going on that you lose if you play both of those scenes as long extended scenes. But if we can figure out a way to cross cut between the 2 scenes and get to these particular moments, you really sort of ratchet up that tension in terms of like something's going to happen. So by the time he says, um, uh, he makes the comment about you, so you have a witness. You really think so? Something to that effect. That next line, I mean, that next shot is the gun coming out with the head, and it's like instead of the audience 100% knowing what's going to happen, because I think we felt it when the scene was written as 2 separate scenes where it's like, oh, once we go there, you just know something's going to happen. So it was like, how do we construct these 2 sequences to make it feel like both of these things are happening at the same time? And it was like, that was one of those. I remember watching it with my assistant, and we both kind of, felt the same thing. So I actually did that in the editor's cut, knowing that, okay, I've got this longer version in case the director wants to see it, but it's like, once I get something in my head, like, oh, I feel like it's got to be like this, I presented it with, hey, I'm gonna try something, so just be prepared when you watch the end. And she loved it, what I mean? So it was one of those, she loved it, and then I knew, like I said, it was one of those, I knew Ben would really love it too. And that's the type of stuff that, you know, you read it on paper and you know what I mean? Like it feels right. And then all of a sudden the footage is in front of you and you're just like, oh, it needs something else. So that was probably one of my, like, in terms of that season, one of those sequences where you really feel like, oh, okay, I think I just did something that nobody was kind of thinking, that worked in a way that really kind of elevated all of it.
It worked very well. Like I was obviously I was really hoping, like, we got Ramsey at this point, and then you started the cross cutting, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. I'm like, oh no, what's happening? What's going on?
So
And it was, without giving too much away, it was like such a, s- a sweet way, that he was interacting with the other person in the hotel room, and it was just, oh man, it got me. It was really good. I think I'm with you. I mean, obviously I'll never see it, but I think I'm with you. I don't think that would have worked as, um, full scene and full scene. The cross cutting was a fantastic addition.
Yeah, and like I said, if you think like, I mean, we probably cut about at least a minute, maybe more, of just dialogue that really, at the end of the day, we didn't need. Like if I'm remembering correctly, the Ramsey scene pretty much stayed as is. It was really on the B side when she's with him that it was like there was a sweetness there, and you totally got all of that, but you just wanted to get to the gun being pulled out a little bit a lot quicker. So
Were there any specific challenges when you were editing to balance kind of like it's a procedural crime show, but also it's got so many psychological and emotional arcs. Was there any challenge in trying to kind of get through the procedural crime portions of this and kind of get the audience invested in the emotional arcs?
well, like I said, it seemed performances. We were always uh I think we were working with good material, good actors. So in terms of the performance stuff, it was never an issue. But at the end of the day, there's a family element to it. There's no like, you know what I mean? Like, there's you kind of you have to service it in a way that at least makes the audience feel like they're getting character moments, and when you start to get those character moments is really when I think you start to love the characters themselves. So, obviously, once you start getting into the nitty gritty of it, or more into the serial killer, I mean, the audience is more gravitated like, please get us back to this. So we tried to be conscious of the fact that you know that there's a bigger story here to tell, but I mean, if you at the end of the day, if you don't care about these characters at all and you don't sort of service them, what I mean, like we're thinking bigger picture. It's not all about season one, like there's season two, which we literally are probably less than a week away from finishing and beyond, So it's like if you don't start to get to know these characters as individuals, what I mean? You're just not gonna, you're not gonna be as invested with them. So we knew like what the Ramsey storyline, like, that was gold, you know what I mean? So it was like, how do we service the family stuff and also, make us care about that. In terms of the psychological stuff, probably, and maybe I might be jumping ahead here, the cross visions was probably our biggest not issue. It was just really, what is a cross vision? What does that entail? Because it was written, and it was shot with a few different devices, but ultimately it was figured out in the editing room of how that was going to play out. And that's with those sort of quick cuts, with the sound design, with the vocal pieces of dialogue that would sort of spark memories for Cross. That was probably the hardest in terms of figuring out what that was. And then once we sort of figured it out, it was kind of making sure it was uniform in sort of all the episodes. But remember, there was Roz did the first two, Jorge did the second block. I did the third block. We brought in one editor for episode 7, Jeff, and then my assistant and I both tackled the finale together. So, we have all different. We have basically 4 different editors, and so that was one of those we kind of discussed amongst ourselves in terms of what we all kind of sort of did our thing, and then ultimately we just like, oh, I like how you did this, or you like how you did that. Let's make sure we bring all those elements into the rest of the episodes. And that was when I talked about me doing that sort of final pass on everything. That was me just making sure like all of that stuff kind of played in a way that felt like like it was supposed to.
It was incredibly cohesive for having that many hands and minds on it. It was a very cohesive package for sure.
Right.
I hope I get to talk to you for cross season 2 as well.
Like I said, we're very excited for for the audience to see it. Obviously, bigger in a lot of ways, location wise. I won't tell you too much, but much bigger sort of mythology kind of that sort of goes on too. So it's been exciting.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
I have one more question for you, Stephen. I'd like to know what your guilty pleasure film or television show is. Something maybe that you return to all the time, or you can't resist watching if you see it on.
Well, in terms of, I mean, when I have time off is usually my time where I sort of catch up on things. So I'm sort of obsessed with Righteous Gemstones it was on Max. I tend to gravitate towards the half hours, because I spend probably more time in the 1 hour worlds, and there's something about just kind of being able to just sort of sit back and relax. So that's probably my current obsession right now. Although I will say one of the best things I've seen recently is Landman on Paramount Plus with Billy Bob Thornton. Something about that one just, that one hooked me in, and 2 days that I was sort of done, and it was just one of those where still thinking about certain moments and scenes, and it's just like, those are the times where you're just like, God, I love what I do. I love when I see stuff that just still like inspires me. You see performance, and you see footage where you're just like, oh my God, I could, I would have loved to have cut that. And then there's times where it's like, oh my God, there's no world where I would have ever. One other show too was I got to work on the final season of Cobra Kai, and that one, I thought in terms of emotional sort of payout, they just nailed it. It was really, everything they sort of promised in that series really got paid off in a way that was super enjoyable.
It was Cobra Kai. I mean, that's not what we're really talking about here, but I saw that, and I just have to tell you, I was a very young kid when that came out. I had a horrible crush on Ralph Macchio, and I always hated Johnny. Always hated him. And like throughout the season, you like him, you hate him, you like him, you hate him, you like him. But that last season, man, and like just like it, I didn't think it was gonna get me. I honestly didn't think
Sure.
get me, but it got me. I was like,
Oh yeah, like I said, those guys really had a vision, and it paid off in a way. I got to direct Ralph's episode in season 6. So, and I'm originally from Long Island too, so it was really nice being able to sort of connect with him in a way. Like, I can remember I believe I was 10 when I saw the Karate Kid, and the idea that literally 30 years later, I'm in an editing bay with him talking about the show. It was super fun.
that's awesome. That's a fantastic story. Yeah, it was a great show. I mean, you keep hitting them out of the park. I can tell you that much. Your IMDb page is full of gems for sure.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
That's it for this week. You can check us out on filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Jamie Hitchings, and thank you for watching, and thank you, Stephen Lang, ACE, for being with us today.